People like the stories, and people like the writing, and people tend to remember the stories long after they're finished. And I think how you get there, it varies from author to author and genre to genre. And I was just fortunate that I found what worked for me. The lucky one was to make really Beth, the main female character, as interesting as Logan. And he was a very complex character. He was a former Marine. He's suffering from, PTSD, they call it in the United States, or PTSS. And he's just struggling to make sense of all of these losses that he experienced when he was in Iraq. Essentially, his entire unit died, all of his friends, and he watched them die. And something like that changes a person. And so when he gets home, he needs to find a way to heal. The challenge then was to make her as interesting as him. Well, you added a complex relationship with the father of her child, and that was partly the answer. The other part of the answer was that she too had an experience with war, and that was that her brother had been killed by friendly fire. And so when she sees a Marine, she sees someone that could have possibly killed her brother. If that's not conflict, I don't know what is. My personal favorite character is Zeus the dog. Because he was modeled after my dog Rex. That's Rex. And Rex laid at my feet as I wrote this novel. And every time Zeus tilts his head in the novel, it's because Rex tilted his head in real life. There's always changes whenever you adapt a screenplay. There's always changes. And these changes are largely done so that the movie fits within the timeline. So many elements are cut from the novel, essentially. At the same time, I think they did a very good job at retaining the spirit and the intent of the characters, and the spirit and the intent of the story and most of the plot elements, and I thought they made a very good movie. And that's really the only things I ask when Hollywood makes a film of mine. No, when I conceive a story, when I think of the story, I think of it in terms of being both a novel and a film, which just makes it that much more challenging because it limits you on what you can do. For instance, you can't have a novel that's very heavy in introspection because you can't film someone thinking. So you want to, so the bar is higher to hurdle in the thought process. But then, once you start the writing, it's exactly the same as any other novel because there's no guarantee that a film will be made. Remember, I think one of the things you should strive to do as an author is to write a novel that people are so caught up in the story the first time, they just read it straight through. And then the second time they go through, they realize then how well it was written. And that it becomes a novel that they want to read a second time, maybe not immediately, but sometime in the future. And that they remember both the story and the characters for a long time. I think if you write a novel that does those things, you've written a very good novel. And all of that goes to answering your question. I think most of these novels that I've written fall into this category, that people remember these characters and they remember the story because you don't spell out every specific thought they go through. Number one, in my opinion, that's lazy writing. It's much easier to say everything. If you are not governed by pace, that's one of the most challenging things to do in a novel. If you say, it only matters what I say, and the story, even if it slows down the story, well, I think you run into very much trouble as far as the overall quality of a novel. That's number one. But the more you specify, often the less clear these characters become in the reader's mind. Simplicity is more challenging than complexity. And efficiency is more challenging than flowery. I try to write, for the most part, when the kids are in school. That way, when they get out of school, I'm around. And I write, it takes about 70 writing days to write a novel. And it's usually 70 out of 150 days. Now, the other 80 days, what am I doing? I'm either editing, or I'm thinking of what to write next, or I'm touring, or I'm promoting a film, or I'm running my television production company, or all of these other elements in life. I'm producing movies, I'm on vacation with my wife, I'm at my kid's soccer game.